Thanks for checking out this video. For a full list of materials used in this project, head down to the description below and click on Show More. I'm going to begin my wreath by making a base of 8 seed beads that's going to run around the whole form here. And then from there, I'll be able to add my pine needles. So to start the base, I'm going to pick up a stop bead here on the end of my thread, and you don't need much of a tail thread after this, just a few inches. You're going to start on the underside here. So here's the underside. Both sides look the same. You're just going to decide which one's going to be the underside and which one's going to be the top. I'm going to start on the underside here and go through one of the holes that's on the outside edge. If we look at this form, we see that we have 2 circles of holes. So I have holes here that are running along the outside of my form, and then I have holes that are on the inside here. And they're offset, so we have this nice little jagged pattern, and that's going to help us create a nice base. So going through one of these holes that's on the outside of the form here, I'm going to pull my needle and thread through and just let that stop bead stop that extra thread from coming through. I'm going to pick up 5 of my 8-ohs and let those fall down to the base. And so now I'm going to count 3 holes forward from the hole that my thread is coming out of. So my thread is coming out of this hole here. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 holes, and then that's the hole I'm going to go back down. And this will pull those 5 8-ohs diagonally across the form. I'll be starting here on the outside circle of my little holes here, and then I move on to the inside circle of holes. So now to add the second set of 5 8-ohs, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, and I'm going to go through the hole one back. I'm going to backtrack, so I'm going to go through the hole one back towards me, and it's going to be on that outside track or circle of holes. And then I'm going to pick up another 5 8-ohs. I like to start with a darker color here at the base, and then as I add the pine needles, I use more variety and brighter colors. So I've got another set of 5 beads here, and again I'm going to count 1. This hole does already have some thread going through it, but I'm still going to count that one. So 1, 2, 3, and go through that next hole. And I'm going to backtrack 1, come up through the hole just 1 back towards me, and repeat this again. Pick up 5 of my 8-ohs, 1 to the third hole, and pull. So you can see here that I'm getting these layers of 5 seed beads sort of stacking and rotating as they go around the form. I'm going to continue this until I've gone around the form and added my 8-oh seed beads the entire way around, and then I will move on to embellishing and adding some pine needles to really make this look like a wreath. I'm adding my last set of 5 8-ohs, and I just wanted to show you this because it can get a little tricky if you're not sure what you're looking at. So I've come up, I've backtracked 1, and I'm ready to pick up 5 8-ohs. And now you can see here now you're back at the beginning And so counting those 1, 2, 3 holes gets a little bit tricky because you can't see them very well. So it's going to be 1, 2, and then this third hole is actually probably going to be hiding here under your first set of 8-ohs that you picked up. So just go through that hole there that's hiding. And then you'll see it right back at the beginning. And now if you'd like to, we can take off the stop bead on the back and just do a little knot. Just a simple little overhand knot once or twice here. And then you won't need to keep that stop bead on there. So now we're going to move on to the next section here and add some branches onto our wreath. I now have some more things on my mat here, some more fun beads to play around with. I threw in a couple brighter colors and more sparkly colors of my 11-ohs, in my 8-oh seed beads. And I also have a 4mm bicone and some 3x4 rondelles here in a green and a red to also enhance and add some sparkle to my wreath. So my thread here is still in the back. I've just done that little knot so I didn't have to keep my stop bead there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass through one of the holes that's on that inside circle here of my wreath. And when I come out on the front, I will be coming out right at the base of one of my sets of 5 8-ohs. I'm going to pass my needle and thread through all 5 of those beads. So I'm coming out the bottom facing the outside here of my wreath. So here's where I'm going to start adding my pine needles. They're essentially going to be like a fringe that I add on to each one of these bases. I think of these as like little base branches, so you could even do them in a pretty brown color if you'd like to make it a little bit more natural. But I chose the green because I want it to be a really full green wreath. So coming out the end here of that set of 5, I'm going to pick up 2 or 3 of my 8-oh seed beads. And you can pick up as many or as little seed beads as you'd like, but if you add more, you're going to make a much fuller wreath, and if you add less, you're going to make a thinner wreath. So just experiment here a little bit with this first one and see what looks good to you, and then you can continue that on the rest of the branches. So I like a nice full wreath, but I don't want it to be too big. So what I'm going to do here is just pick up 2 of my 8-ohs in a brighter color here. And then I'm going to end this with one of my crystals. Add a little crystal there at the end. So now, if you've done fringe before, you know that you do need a bead here at the end. So I'm going to pick up one more of my 8-ohs. And I'm not going to, and this 8-oh here, I'm actually just going to leave on my needle. And then I'm going to pass back through the 3 beads that I just added. And the first of my 8-oh seed beads here, the first 8-oh in that set of 5. And pull everything nice and tight. And there I have my first little fringe there to start creating my wreath. And I refer to these as the pine needles on my wreath. So to create another needle, I'm going to essentially do the same thing. I'm going to switch up the colors a little bit, and I'm going to do a couple of my darker 11-ohs here and just end it with another 11-oh, another 8-oh. So we're always going to have that one 8-oh at the end that just kind of hangs out on your needle, and you're going to pass back through the beads in your pine needle as well as the next bead up in that set of 5. So I'm passing through that second 8-oh, passing from me upwards So I'm passing upwards toward the next 8-0 in that branch that I'm working on. I'm going to keep doing this, do this a couple more times here. Add a couple 8-0s on for my branch or for my pine needle. Pick up a bead for the end. Go back through the beads in my pine needle and then the next bead in my branch. Give it a nice pull to make sure everything is nice and tight and there's no slack. And you can see how this now is starting to form a nice little row of pine needles here. And I'm going to continue here just like this on each individual set of those 5 8-0s. Going through the 4th 8-0 here. I've got a couple more here that I can add. So I'm picking up 2 8-0s here, and then again 1 for the end. Back through my 2 8-0s, and through my last 8-0 here that was part of that branch or that base. And I'm also going to pass through the hole in my form there at the bottom, or at the base of that set of 5, being careful not to catch any of my little pine needles while I'm pulling my thread tight. And I'm going to move up on the back here. You can see I'm coming out of my my punched hole here on the center. On the inside circle here of holes. I'm going to move up to the next circle or the next hole, pull through, and that will then put me in position to work on the next little branch. So I'm going to pass through again all 5 of those seed beads in that branch, and I'm going to repeat the same steps here. I'm going to start with an 8-0. I'm going to put a crystal on, finish this with an 8-0, and then go back through my crystal and the 8-0 and the first 8-0 here in my branch. So I'm passing up through that first 8-0, so I'm coming out between the first and the second. And now I'm ready to add another of my little pine needles. So I'm going to keep doing this until I've got this pretty full, and remembering to add in some of my red, some more of my green crystals. The 8-0s are going to be quite a lot of it. It's going to be the bulk of it for you here, but adding these crystals in periodically is going to give you some crystal, like some nice shine. I like to put these together in groups of 3 to give you a berry feel, and also to just kind of keep things looking really nice, like a natural wreath. So I'm going to continue a little bit longer here, and I'll show you what I have here in a few minutes. I have about half of my wreath completed, and I just wanted to show you what this looks like here the more you work on it. I kept the darker colors, the darker color of my 8-0s concentrated here on the center, on the base that I was creating off of, and then as well as in the little pine needles themselves, I kept the darker colors towards the center, and then as I worked towards the edges of my needles, I added the lighter colors. Some of the needles here are just completely that lighter, brighter 8-0, and it adds more dimension to the wreath, so it looks a little bit more real, like actual foliage, and all the variety, the color variety, as well as just how the light hits it is going to be a lot more natural if you concentrate the darker colors on the inside and work with your lighter colors on the outside. So I wanted to show you what mine looked like at this point and also give you a couple other ideas here. I have also brought out some of these 2mm pastel green. They're kind of like a really pretty pastel apple green color. And I wanted to bring these in and show you what these guys look like, because I love adding all different kinds of textures and shapes and textures, different sheens like shiny or if it's matte. So pearl is sort of different, it's right in between there. I wanted to give you some ideas on how to use that as well in your wreath. So starting here again with my 8-ohs, I'm going to pick up 2 of my 8-ohs. And I'm going to use that darker color. It's actually the same color that I have on my branch here. And then I'm going to pick up one of my lighter colors, which it looks like I've used up almost all my lighter colors, so need a little bit more there. I'm going to try ending this with one of my pearls. So this pearl should have a nice little effect there at the end, adding a little bit more dimension than I already have. I'm going to do this again, concentrating those darker colors towards the bottom, and ending with my pearl. And remember that pearl is that bead that we're not going to go through twice. We just pick it up, we leave it on our needle, and then we pass through the next several beads. And I've really been liking the look of this as it gets a little fuller, so I've been making some of my branches a little bit shorter, some of them a little bit longer. This one has 4 8-oh seed beads on it, and ending with that pearl. I love the look of the pearls in here. It would also be lovely to do a whole needle of the pearls, so I might do that a little bit in here too. I like adding some different textures, some variety in here because it looks a lot more natural when you do that. It doesn't look like you just bought it at the store, or you it looks like you are looking at a real wreath or some real foliage when you did that, because nothing in nature ever looks the same twice. Here we go. So now with some little pearls at the end, and I'm going to continue here. I'm going to try some using just all of my pearls, see what that looks like, just like you would in a natural wreath, trying some different textures, grabbing some different types of evergreens as you build your wreath. So it's the same thing here. I'm just going to try some different types of beads to get some different types of effects. I'm going to work on this a little bit more, and then we will show you how to finish it up. I finished adding all of my pine needles to the branch, or those bases that I had originally started with. And I'm quite happy with my wreath. I love how full it is, and I love all the different textures that I have in it. However, there are some spots where I want to go back and add. I didn't pick up some berries in here, and I'd like to now. So what I'm going to do on the back part is I'm going to take a look and see where I would need to go. And I'm just going to follow my thread path on the back here. And I'm going to travel, taking my thread and just kind of going under the thread that's already there, just to hold my thread in place here as I travel along. And I'm going to use this thread that's already existing, coming in and out of those circles. And I'm going to pass underneath the thread, oops, and pull this off the bead mat here. So you can see I'm just tucking my thread in as I go, as I work my way over to the part of my frame here where I want to start working on the other side. So I'm I'm there actually now. So I'm gonna go actually just one more little section over here. And I'm gonna poke my needle through that hole where I want to start adding more embellishment. And what I want to do is add some of these little red berries here. So I'm just going to go ahead and add them on. Just pick up one, let it fall down, and then pick up whichever bead you want to hold that guy, to hold this little crystal in place. And then just go back down through that hole. And you can see I can continue to add more embellishment, and I can continue to fill in areas where maybe the pattern that I chose or the beads that I picked up weren't quite as full, or maybe there wasn't enough color contrast for me. So I can just continue here popping up through any hole that I want to and working on the front side here now that I have this base of all of my branches and pine needles on here. So go ahead and continue, and if you have some place where you want to embellish or you want to add a little bit of different color, you can go ahead and do that now, just remembering to follow this thread path here and tuck your needle and thread under the existing thread as you go, so that you don't accidentally end up with thread crossing in the center hole here. You don't want to see any thread crossing from one side of your frame to the other when you're looking at the front side of your wreath. So go ahead and continue with that. Make any little embellishments, any little changes you want to the sections. Add some more color, some more texture, whatever you want to do, and then we will finish this guy and make him into a beautiful hanging wreath. Once you have your wreath as fluffy and bedazzled as you would like it, we are going to add a loop to the top so that you can then use this and hang it somewhere. I want to bring my needle and thread on the back side here to close to where I want to be on the front side. And I would locate one of these outside holes, one of these holes that's going to be close to the outside rim here, that is pretty easy to access. So if I just push my needles down, I can see that this one's really easy to access. I don't have a lot, I don't have anything kind of stuck there. I can get through that one easily. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass through the back to the front. And then I'm gonna pick up a series of my 8/0s. You want between probably around 15 to 20. And there's no right or wrong number of seed beads. You just want the number of seed beads or the length that is going to get you the appropriate sized loop. So I think I have about 10 here. So I'm going to pick up another 6 or 7. So what you're going to do with this loop then is this loop can then be used to attach an ornament hanger. You can attach a little ribbon. You can also just skip this part. You don't have to do the loop. And what you can do is just tie a really pretty little ribbon around and use that to hang. You know, there's all kinds of ways that you can hang ornaments like this. This is just one way that you can add a loop if you do want a loop permanently attached. So here I have about 17 or 18 beads, and that looks about the right size loop for me. So what I'm going to do here is then pass back through that first 8/0 that I picked up, and I'm going to try to also at the same time pass through that hole. And when I do that, I will then have a little loop facing on the front side of my piece. It's nice to reinforce. So what I'm going to do here is just pass my needle and thread under my thread a couple times. I want to make sure that I'm getting this anchored here because there's nothing really that's holding my thread. I don't have a stop bead on the side. So what I'm going to do is then pass through all of these beads again, passing through that hole and the 8/0 at the bottom. and then passing through all of the beads in the loop. I can pass through only the beads in the loop, so I can skip that 8-0 at the base there next to my hole, next to the hole in my form, and I can completely skip through that, or skip by that, and just reinforce the loop itself. And once I've done that, I can go back through the 8-0, and as I like to do, try to go through that hole all in one step. And once I do that and I give a nice little pull, I have a nice loop here that's pretty stiff and sturdy, flexible of course, but it's also in the same color as my wreath, so it'll blend in very nicely. All that's left for me to do now is to tuck my thread in here on the back end. I'll tie it off a little bit, I'll give it a couple little knots back here, and then I will burn that down. So that is how to make a beautiful little wreath out of one of these little wooden forms. So you can really see how taking something so simple with just some little holes here for you to work with, you can embellish it really almost any way that you want. And this is just one simple little way to get you more familiar with the forms and to give you some more experience working with them. If you enjoyed this video, please comment below and let us know your thoughts. You can also subscribe to our channel to be notified as soon as we have more beading tutorials out that you will enjoy probably just as much as you enjoyed this one.